In 334 BC, the young king of Macedonia, Alexander, began a campaign that would echo through the corridors of time. Barely 20 years old, with a restless ambition burning in his heart, he led his army eastward against the mighty Persian Empire, the superpower of the ancient world. What began as a bold invasion would, within a decade, become one of the most astonishing military conquests in history. His name would live forever: Alexander the Great. Centuries before his birth, Greece had been a land of divided city-states. Rugged hills separated proud communities that shone in art, philosophy, and warfare. Athens thrived on democracy and intellect, while Sparta's iron discipline forged warriors unmatched in endurance. When Persia invaded Greece in 480 BC, it was these rival cities that stood together, halting the might of Xerxes' empire at Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea. Their victories bought Greece its golden age, yet unity soon dissolved into decades of civil wars that left the land exhausted, vulnerable to a rising power in the north. Macedonia, long considered a backwater by the cultured Greeks, rose under King Philip II. A brilliant strategist, Philip transformed his army with the sarissa, a spear so long it turned the Macedonian phalanx into an unstoppable wall of death. By 338 BC, he had crushed Athens and Thebes at Chaeronea and united Greece under his command. But on the eve of his grand plan, an invasion of Persia, he was assassinated. His son, Alexander, just 20 years old and trained by Aristotle himself, ascended the throne. Ruthless, visionary, and already a seasoned commander, Alexander crushed all opposition at home before turning his gaze eastward, towards Persia. In the spring of 334 BC, Alexander led 40,000 soldiers across the Hellespont into Asia. It was the dawn of one of the greatest campaigns in history. His army was an instrument of precision: Macedonian phalangites wielding 18-foot pikes, Greek hoplites, Thracian javelin throwers, and the fearsome companion cavalry led by Alexander himself. Facing them were Persian satraps, uniting forces to defend their empire. At the river Granicus, the two armies clashed. Alexander led the charge himself, plunging into the river under a storm of Persian arrows. His assault was reckless but brilliant. Amidst the chaos, he was struck on the head by a Persian noble, only to strike back with his lance. When another enemy came at him from behind, his loyal general Clitus the Black intervened, cutting down the attacker before the blow could fall. The Persians were crushed. Their cavalry fled, and their Greek mercenaries were slaughtered. Asia Minor lay open before Alexander. City after city surrendered, while his enemies retreated east. He moved swiftly to cut off Persia's naval power by capturing the coastal fortresses of Miletus and Halicarnassus. When the great Persian general Memnon died, the sea war collapsed. By the spring of 333 BC, Alexander was marching through Asia Minor, seizing provinces, and fulfilling the legend of the Gordian knot, not by untying it, but by slicing it in two. Soon, Darius III, the Persian king of kings, gathered his vast army to confront the young invader. At Issus, the two forces met on narrow ground between mountains and sea. Darius's army was immense, perhaps 100,000 strong, but the terrain nullified his advantage. Alexander, leading his right wing, charged directly into the Persian ranks. The battle was fierce, and for a moment, the Macedonian phalanx wavered. But Alexander's courage turned the tide. He struck at the heart of the Persian line, forcing Darius to flee in his chariot. The Persian army collapsed in panic, and Alexander claimed a second, stunning victory. Among the spoils were Darius's family, his wife, mother, and children, whom Alexander treated with remarkable respect. As the Persian army melted away, he pressed south into Phoenicia, destroying the island fortress of Tyre after a brutal 7-month siege. Gaza too fell after fierce resistance. In Egypt, Alexander was hailed as a liberator, crowned pharaoh at Memphis, and declared the son of Ammonius by the oracle at Siwa. He founded Alexandria at the Nile Delta, a city destined to shine for millennia. While he was in Egypt, rebellion stirred in Greece. The Spartans, with Persian gold, rose in defiance. But Alexander's regent, Antipater, crushed them at Megalopolis, ending forever the dream of Spartan dominance. With his rear secure, Alexander prepared for the greatest confrontation of all, a showdown with Darius on the plains of Gaugamela. In 331 BC, the Persian king gathered his final army, vast beyond counting, with cavalry, scythe chariots, and even war elephants. Alexander faced impossible odds but relied on his unmatched tactics. He led his army across the plain, feinting right, luring Darius to stretch his line thin. Then, with precision and speed, he turned and charged straight at the Persian center. His companions smashed through, and again Darius fled. The Persian army broke apart in chaos. The field was strewn with bodies. Alexander had destroyed the empire of Persia. Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis fell into his hands. In Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, he allowed his men to plunder the city. The great palaces of Xerxes went up in flames, vengeance for the burning of Athens a century before. Yet even in victory, Alexander's ambition grew restless. Darius fled east, but before Alexander could capture him, the Persian king was murdered by his own governor, Bessus. When Alexander found his corpse, he had it buried with royal honors and vowed to avenge him. The conqueror then moved into the wild eastern provinces, modern Afghanistan and Central Asia, chasing Bessus and putting down revolts. He founded cities everywhere he went, Herat, Kandahar, Samarkand, each bearing his name. But this long campaign changed him. He began to adopt Persian customs, wearing their robes, demanding proskynesis, and marrying a local princess, Roxana. His men, weary and homesick, saw in him not their king but a god-obsessed tyrant. In a drunken rage, he killed Clitus, the same man who had once saved his life. His remorse was deep, but the distance between him and his soldiers had grown too wide to close. In 327 BC, Alexander crossed the Hindu Kush into India. He fought the tribes of Swat and then faced King Porus at the Battle of Hydaspes. It was his hardest fight yet. Porus brought war elephants that trampled men and horses alike, but Alexander's tactics prevailed. He admired Porus's bravery so much that he restored him to his throne, a loyal ally under Macedonian rule. But as Alexander's army reached the river Bias, they refused to march further. 8 years of war, endless miles from home, had broken their will. The dream of conquering the edge of the world died on that riverbank. Alexander, furious yet understanding, turned back. His journey home would prove even more brutal, crossing deserts, facing rebellions, and losing thousands to exhaustion and thirst. When he finally returned to Babylon, the world was his. Greece, Egypt, Persia, and India all lay beneath his banner. Yet his heart was restless still. He dreamed of new wars, of conquering Arabia, perhaps the oceans beyond. But in 323 BC, at just 32 years old, the conqueror fell ill and died. His empire, the largest the world had yet seen, shattered soon after his death. Still, his legend endured. To the Persians, he was Alexander the Accursed; to the West, he was Alexander the Great, the man who reached the edges of the known world and dared to call himself divine. His empire crumbled, but his name became eternal, a symbol of courage, ambition, and the boundless reach of human will.